What's up, boys and girls? This is Ajax, and this is a discussion on training volume. How many sets should you do per muscle per week? So let's start with a question, context. What is the minimum amount of training to produce muscle growth? Based on the scientific and also anecdotal historical research, one set. If you do one set a week, you can experience muscle growth. Now, this applies largely to novices. As you become more trained, one set will plateau. It won't continuously produce growth in most people. But we know as a starting point, one set, that is the minimum amount of training you can do. It's one. One is more than zero. So we know the minimum is one. What's the maximum? What's the maximum number of sets you can do in a week for muscle growth? Based on current research, it's about 30. Might be even higher than that, but 30 is about the upper limit for muscle growth. Now, if we have one on this side and we have 30, we can draw this out into a standard distribution. This is a bell curve. Here's one, here's 30, and based on research from Kilgore and Schoenfeld and meta-analysis by Krieger, we know that muscle growth peaks out, it reaches its maximum rate of gain at somewhere around 10 to about 20 sets per week, with the middle being 15 if we go with the 30 as being the top. So this is moderate to high volume, this is very high volume, and this is low volume. Now the argument kind of becomes, well, what should you be doing week to week if you want to keep gaining? And we have to have some considerations with this. As a beginner, everything works. You can do one set, you can do 4 sets, you can do 5 sets, you can do 10 sets, and your gains happen very quickly. Muscle growth is very rapid the first year of training. And then it slows down in year 2, it gets slower in year 3, and by year 4 or 5, you've more or less hit your upper natural limit for muscle growth. So do you need more sets at that point? If you're an advanced lifter, do you need to be doing 20 plus sets per week? Maybe, maybe not. There's two different arguments here, and I'm not going to tell you which one's the correct one because I don't know. No one really does. There's the argument that as you become more advanced, you should train with low to moderate volume because your workouts are much more intense. You're using heavier weights, and your recovery is not rising higher and higher the longer you train. Your recovery essentially stays the same from your first year of training. So that's one argument. Train lower to moderate volume, focus on progressive strength gains. It's not about how much you train, it's about getting stronger over time in the long term sustainably. But then there's the other argument that as you train longer and longer, the same level of stimulus no longer reaches the necessary level of intensity, and you might need more sets, 15, 20 plus sets. And you'll find people that are successful with both strategies. You'll find people who are successful with the low to moderate approach. You'll find natural lifters with the high to very high volume. And if you can hold these two contrasting ideas in your head, you realize that the human response to training is a bell curve. Human genetic response to training, your individual response to training, follows its own standard distribution. So I'll do some drawing. So you might have people who they will hit peak muscle growth over on this side of the chart, and they don't necessarily need to go higher. You might have individuals that need to go higher, let's say 15 plus sets, 20 and beyond, to get the same level of growth. You might be a person where your muscle growth plateaus somewhere within the 15 to 20 range because you can't recover from more volume. You might be a person where perhaps if we push volume higher and higher, you keep eking out incremental growth. But for someone else over here, this would be massive overtraining. It'd be unnecessary. You don't know until you know. You have to be experimenting. N equals 1. You have to be trying things in your own training. If you know what your key performance indicator exercises are, you figured out what works for your body. You figured out you need to be doing a minimum number of sets. then you can experiment. You can experiment with low to moderate to high, and over time you develop your own training philosophy, essentially, of doing what works for you. Professionally, my professional perspective, I prefer people to start on the lower end of volume, actually in the 5 to 10 to about the 12 range. The reason being is that you can always recover from this. So I am with the camp that would take the position of lower to moderate volume training being better over time. Recovery is finite. Recovery is not infinite. And as you get stronger, as you become more advanced, as you make your gains in year 5 and beyond, your strength levels are really what are going to determine your level of muscular development. And if we can stay in the low to moderate range with maybe occasional training cycles of higher volume, we can ensure that recovery is always happening. And if recovery is happening, adaptation is happening. But if you're over here, if you're training high volume all the time, pushing the limits, and you're not recovering, the likelihood that you're growing, it's low, to say the least. Lots of people do fall into a volume trap where they believe that they're not seeing much growth here, and if they push heavier, they push higher, they do more sets, and that's going to be what delivers the muscle growth, and they just end up over-exercising, essentially. Or maybe you are the person that sees this level of volume be effective for you. Again, you have to try things. You have to find out for yourself. N=1. I tell everybody, clients, trainees, training is a journey of self-discovery. You're always learning about yourself. You're always learning about the process. So what you're doing on any given day, any given week, any given month, year, it's going to be different, a little bit different, maybe very different from what you did prior. It's a dynamic process. It's evolution. Hopefully that was informative for you guys. Any questions, let me know in the comments. Remember to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.